Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today as we're going to discuss the Mercury Retrograde in Sagittarius energies that begin on November 25th and last until December 15th. This is going to be a Mercury Retrograde where Mercury stays in Sagittarius and interacts with Chiron in Aries, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, and Saturn in Pisces. So I'm going to be discussing all of that in today's show. So let's start with the bare bone essentials here. Mercury retrograde begins November 25th at 9:42 p.m. Eastern Time. Mercury stations retrograde at 22 degrees of Sagittarius and then retrogrades back to 6 degrees of Sag, stationing direct on December 15th at 3:56 p.m. Eastern Time. So in your chart, you want to identify where you have 6 degrees to 22 degrees of Sagittarius. This is where the retrograde is occurring for you. And as with all Mercury retrogrades, it's about review, reprioritize, reconsider, reassess, and also relax. Yes, relax, because the retrograde is meant to be a time when we slow down all of our mental processing, because we are dominated by our minds, our thoughts, our communications on a regular basis. It drives us. We can have a hard time shutting off or turning down all of our own mental activity. And during these 3 weeks, it's a time to really look at what is essential, what do I need, and what is just exaggerated and taking me away from my core. Now, Mercury retrograde is a great time to clean up anything in your daily life that you don't need. It can be a wonderful time to go through your inbox, unsubscribe, get rid of excess, look at what you are receiving, especially in the forms of digital communications, and ensure that it's what you really want. It's a great time to look at the apps on your phone. What apps do I never use? What do I not want? Also to look at the settings on your phone and determine what apps are tracking me. What part of my phone needs to be cleared of browsing history, of cookies, of excess data. Mercury retrograde is a great time to take inventory and stock of what's on your desk, what's on your calendar, to look at where your energy is going and to determine, do I want to keep these plans? Do I want to cancel this? Do I want to be a part of this? And to stay aware of what is truly best for your daily energy. Mercury retrograde is when we cancel plans, we reevaluate our commitments, we experience delays and transportation issues. There's a requirement to be more flexible and adaptable, to have that next option, that second choice. Okay, if this doesn't happen on time, what can I do that will still get me to where I need to go? If something falls through, then what? Then what do you do? And this particular Mercury retrograde is exactly about these themes. It's about remaining adaptable, flexible, open to another possibility or direction. There is a focus here on the mutable squares, and that's because this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is forming a mutable T-square with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. Now, I am going to get to that here in just a moment, but I wanted to give you some broad stroke understandings that this particular Mercury retrograde is going to bring up more exaggerated issues and problems. There could feel like there's bigger snafus and blunders, perhaps more travel headaches, more communication problems. And that's because when Mercury is in Sagittarius, communications are bigger. And this means there can be bigger mistakes and misunderstandings where you're not on the same page as someone. So let's break it down a bit here. Now, Mercury is in his detriment in Sagittarius. That means Mercury is the furthest away from his home turf of Gemini. So when we have Mercury going into Sagittarius, we're meant to be bigger thinkers. We're meant to expand and explore and see things from a different angle, to call in more information, and to understand the various experiences that we encounter and we move through in our lifetime. Mercury in Sagittarius has that big vision. It's inspired, it's ready to go. There's a sense of possibility about what could be, what can come together. And it's where you want to go out and see what's possible. Let me try this. Let me see if this project can go anywhere. Let me follow this idea and see where it leads. But the issue with Mercury and Sagittarius is that Sagittarius wants things to be more. It's a very uplifting, positive energy. It loves the jokes and the fun and the parties and let's just have a good time. Don't worry about the details. Don't overthink this. Let this go. Step away. But Mercury can't do that so well because Mercury, in his natural energy of Gemini, wants to know the specifics. If there's a party, when does it start? What's the dress code? Where is it at? Tell me more. Tell me more. And Mercury and Sag will just paint it over and say, oh, don't worry about it. Just show up. It's going to be a great time. So this Mercury actually struggles a bit in Sagittarius because there's a desire for more specific details and information. There's a need to get it right, to not overlook something. And Mercury in Sagittarius can absolutely do that. Mercury in Sagittarius will forget something important and say, oh, right, I forgot to tell you. It's actually an ugly Christmas sweater party. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. So when Mercury is in Sag, there's a sense of, do I have all the information and the details? Because chances are you do not. And this Mercury retrograde, it's very important to ask specific questions. Ask questions and expect other people to ask questions of you. Allow people to gather more information and to understand what's going on. What's the big deal? What's the party about? What's the project? Why are we gathering? Expect people to have questions. And the issue here is that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius doesn't have patience, doesn't want to deal with it, wants to be fancy, footloose, free, and can be quite restless and impatient in understanding what it means to be a responsible communicator. I think of it as Mercury and Sag is where we want to write the book, right? You want to write the book. You have all this information to share. You've got knowledge, anecdotal stories, inspirational thoughts, universal themes that you know are going to be relatable. So it's the sense of, I'm really inspired to do this. I want to write this book. I've got a lot to say. I believe it can help people. Now, safe to say, many authors feel that way. I'm an author. I feel that way. Yes, that's absolutely true. But then when you bring it down to brass tacks and you look at what's essential, in comes the editor that tells you, okay, that's been done 10,000 times. That's not original. Everyone has something to share and they have stories and experiences. How is yours different? How are we going to organize this? How are we going to put it together in a way that's clear and concise and gives people some real solid facts and understanding of how it's applicable to them? And so that's how this Mercury in Sagittarius is pulled into the Jupiter in Gemini requirements. Now, Jupiter is retrograde in Gemini right now. And this is also interesting because Jupiter is in his detriment in Gemini. And that means that Jupiter is actually furthest away from his home turf of Sagittarius. So what we have right here, what I've just described, Mercury in Sag is in Jupiter's territory. Jupiter in Gemini is in Mercury's territory. They're in mutual reception to each other, but they're both retrograde and they're both in their detriment, but they're supporting each other through the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. Now, this axis here is the two oppositional points in the zodiac of Gemini and Sagittarius that focus on information, education, ideas, communications, how we say what we're thinking, as well as our ability to take in new thoughts, new information that expands us or perhaps challenges us or shifts what we thought was true, opens us up to more understandings. So right away here, with this opposition between Mercury retrograde and Jupiter retrograde, it highlights that we're living in a world of multiples, as if you didn't know that. A world of multiple viewpoints, opinions, thoughts, beliefs, ideas, understandings, and on it goes. And with the mutable signs being highlighted here in retrograde, we're being asked to slow down and review how we arrived at certain understandings, where we get our information from, what is credible, what is real, what is applicable to your life and your worldview, and understanding that there are people who feel the opposite, who see the opposite. Of course, it's easy to apply this to the events that are unfolding right now in politics, but I would say expand it open to see how we live in a world of multiple experiences, that we are more diverse than ever on this planet. We are coexisting with different belief systems, different levels of consciousness, different spiritual backgrounds, and on it goes. And so now the energies are very active and very big as we navigate through a world of multiples. And so how do we all take it in? Do we really listen? Or are we just waiting to speak next? Are we deciding that we're right and we're not going to accept more information or different understandings? The Gemini Sagittarius axis also brings up the daily information you consume that forms your ideology, your belief system, and your worldview. And conversely, how that ideology then forms your daily perspective and what is going on in your mind. It's very easy to stay in our comfort zones or in our bubbles and to stay in a place of, well, I'm only going to turn to information or friendships or ideas that support where I'm at. But this Mercury retrograde is asking you to step beyond what you've known and discover something new, or at least be willing to see it from a new angle. That doesn't mean you automatically subscribe. That doesn't mean you're automatically saying, yes, I'm getting on board with that. But this is a Mercury retrograde that not only is opposing that Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, but both are going to be squaring Saturn in Pisces. And so here we have a mutable T-square that is challenging our communications, our minds, what we thought we knew, challenging perhaps where we need to be better communicators and better listeners, where we can assess if we're holding dogma or judgment, if we've limited what we take in, if we're willing to stretch and grow. And I would say that during this particular Mercury retrograde, with this mutable square, including that Jupiter and that Saturn, no, the answer is people are already overwhelmed. We're at capacity. There can be perhaps a lot of discourse and a lot of things being said, but the agreement isn't there. The understanding isn't there. There's a lot that people could feel that they're already trying to figure out and understand. And so the energy isn't exactly open. Of course, determine that for yourself, right? Determine what is aligning for you, what feels right for you. But this is a Mercury retrograde that brings up what we believe and asks us to sit with it. And again, to maybe not make any choices or decisions just yet, but to understand how varied we are in our human experiences and that we can make assumptions from a place of incorrect information, outdated information, one-sided viewpoints, and on it goes. This Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is asking us to move into new territory that challenges us. And we don't often seek that out. We don't often want that. It can be too confusing, too much, but the ability to do so is how we grow. And then it's sitting with it, filtering things out, digesting it, allowing it to either stick or flow through you is also part of the mutable T-square energies here as well. Now keep in mind, there can be more exaggeration and overwhelm with this particular Mercury retrograde energy. There can be the desire to just shut down. I can't take any more. I don't want to hear it. I'm not open. There can be a sense of I need a break. I have to step away. I don't want to enter into certain conversations. I don't want to engage with many people right now. And honestly, the astrology suggests that that's okay. If you're honoring what is true for you, if you're honoring what is best for your energy, there is a sense here that communications aren't going to go as planned, and that it's maybe not the best time to talk about matters that are important to you unless there is a clear invitation or need to do so. So certainly trust what is correct for you, especially which environment is correct for you. Here in the US, you might find that there are people who cancel Thanksgiving meal plans. They don't want to sit at a dinner that might be uncomfortable right now. They don't want to move into territory with friends or coworkers that could instigate fights and disagreements that are not quickly or easily resolved. Typically, that Mercury in Sagittarius goes bigger. It isn't the energy that stops to listen. It says more, speaks faster, and gets louder. When it's retrograde, there can be more of a sense of, okay, let me reel it in, let me pull it in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the mind is open. So I say all this because that's what the astrology suggests with that square to Saturn in Pisces, which is honoring silence, honoring reflection, the hermit energy of pulling it in and not feeling like you have to say everything to everyone, or that you want to have multiple conversations in all these areas of life that feel like they're wearing you out or dissipating your energy. So the guidance here is to be very intentional with your thoughts and your words, to be aware of where you start to feel tired and that the energy is going outside of you and weakening instead of feeling stronger and clearer internally. And part of that square from Saturn and Pisces is to trust the timing. That right now is probably not the best time for certain topics or conversations. It just isn't. And there's wisdom in that. There's wisdom in trusting, I don't have the energy for this. I don't want to put my energy into this. I'm going to focus elsewhere. And that is another strength of the mutable signs, is where can you focus your mind, your energy, and your daily tasks in a way that continues to lift you up, that brings you life, where you feel more supported and connected to your own truth, and however you define that now, because we define truth in different ways at different stages of our lives. And so maybe there is a search here. And keep in mind, Mercury in Sagittarius is a vision quest, is that call of your soul, is I'm opening up to understanding something in a different way, in a new way. What are the answers for me right now? Where am I open to what lifts me up and pulls me forward? So honor that. Honor what that looks like for you, because that's where you could feel like you are receiving. And I do believe that's another key word for Mercury retrograde, is where are you ready to receive and to call in what is best for you at this time, especially as it honors more of what lights you up. Now, this could be a great time to follow a passion, to do something that mentally stimulates you. This is great energy for reviewing, talking, studying, teaching, learning, preparing, reviewing, going back over something to see if you missed it, make sure you didn't miss it. So that can be helpful as you look at year-end requirements or priorities, especially in work or business. What do you need to review or make sure that you have in place before the end of the year? If you have projects or presentations you need to make, ensuring you don't forget any of those specifics or important details, perhaps making sure you get a second opinion and have someone else check it out before you do a live presentation or share any important thoughts with others. Now, this Mercury retrograde can bring up areas of life that need to be up-leveled and expanded, as well as approached in a new manner. So when you're looking at your chart, you identify where you have 6 degrees of Sagittarius to 22 degrees of Sagittarius. That's where Mercury is moving through here and asking you to carefully assess and review what is outdated, what no longer works, what is not a fit, and of course to know that more will come in to fill in those voids or spaces. So there's often a void and openings during Mercury retrograde times. And this is also where we have to settle the mind, to calm it down, and to know that you can trust that if a lot of things are leaving or clearing out, if things are being removed and taken away, know that the universe has a plan for what will come in next and what will be in better alignment. So let's go through some key dates here. Mercury stations retrograde on November 25th at 22 degrees of Sagittarius, and that is where the messages get louder. Mercury is hanging out there and turns up the volume in Sagittarius and has more to say that could be important, but ultimately you're meant to sit with it. Is this true for me? Is this in alignment? Do I resonate with this? What do I need to review, and how can I do so intelligently and thoughtfully? Then Mercury begins that retrograde and will make a trine to Chiron retrograde in Aries at 19 degrees on December 1st. Now, this connection to Chiron in Aries has been ongoing throughout this year. This Mercury has interacted with Chiron multiple times, mostly because Mercury retrogrades have been in fire signs. So there has been that affinity with Chiron in Aries. And there's been this ongoing flow of understanding and insight to Chiron in Aries about what you're healing, what you're moving through, new options and choices, how to rewrite a story, how to rewrite things and to see it in a new light, as well as to stay open to the remedies and medicine that can support what your Chiron in Aries is slowly moving through. So this can be insights, information, communications, and this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is supporting the Chiron healing journey. Then as Mercury continues retrograde, there is the opposition to Jupiter retrograde in Gemini at 17 degrees on December 4th. And then on December 6th, there's a square to Saturn, now direct in Pisces at 13 degrees. And this is also happening as Mercury retrograde is conjunct the Sun in Sagittarius at 14 degrees. So I want to highlight this time period here. I'm actually going to call it December 3rd through December 8th. December 3rd, December 8th, things are haywire. Miscommunications, there's challenges and problems that come up. And not only is this Mercury retrograde conjunct the Sun, but the Sun in Sagittarius is squaring Pisces. This occurs at 13 and 14 degrees. So this is where we want to be very mindful and slow down, take a break, pull back, don't respond, don't engage. Be very conscious of the energy that you're contributing, the words you use, what you're saying, because this is going to be a time period when things really feel ungrounded. And that is one of the key words actually with this Mercury retrograde, ungrounded. The T-square is missing the Virgo energy, which is the 4th mutable sign. And so there's a lack of processes, a lack of specifics and details. How do we get there? How do we solve this? What's going to happen next? What's the process? Is anybody in charge here? This is when there could be bigger transportation issues happening in the world, whether those are strikes, mechanical issues or delays, anything with weather could be a factor. So again, that first weekend in December, if you have plans, you have things going on, have a second option or a backup. Stay flexible, see if you can get a refund, see if you have travel insurance, look at what you have going on and understand that there's potential here for things to not come together. I mean, this is a mutable T-square, including the sun in Sagittarius. And so it can be exaggerated, overwhelming, and big. So if you have travel plans, make sure that you've packed everything. You have a way to get somewhere if plan A doesn't work, and that you're verifying all the specifics and all the details, which is always important for every Mercury retrograde. Now, with Mercury the messenger conjunct the sun in Sagittarius, Mercury is bringing back to the sun the information he has collected since their last conjunction when Mercury was direct, and that was in the very beginning of October when the sun and Mercury were conjunct at 8 degrees of Libra. So since the beginning of October, whatever you have been working on, collecting, understanding, now Mercury the messenger brings it back to the sun in Sagittarius. And there's a sense of, let me review this, let me sit with this and reevaluate it and understand if this is what is still true for me, if this aligns, and if this is what inspires me. And so then Mercury disappears behind the sun and goes into the personal review journey that occurs during every Mercury retrograde. Because Mercury never travels that far away from the sun, there's always this ongoing connection and communications between Mercury and the sun. So every Mercury retrograde, they have their exact conjunction known as a cazimi, which is the heart of the sun, where Mercury drops a message into that sun in Sag and then journeys back to make sure he didn't forget anything, he didn't overlook an important fact or forget his wallet on the counter in the kitchen. There's a sense of, let me take a look at this to ensure that this is truly what I want and where I want to go next. This can be a time of greater consciousness, greater self-reflection, and greater intentionality after Mercury retrograde is conjunct the sun. And remember, that's also when Mercury and the sun square Saturn in Pisces, December 5th and December 6th. So there's something important that needs to be considered and evaluated. And again, this is the energy of just leave me alone. I'm going to take off. I'm going to go do this on my own terms, in my own way. I need space. I need space to think it through. So that's part of how this Mercury retrograde is working with you. Now that Mercury is behind the sun, Mercury is actually going to sextile Venus in Aquarius on December 12th. So December 12th, Mercury meets up with Venus in Aquarius at 6 degrees, and they have a lively little chat. He's catching up with her on everything that she has been investing in, discovering, what she's been creating, her next direction. And also he's tuning in to a collective frequency as that Venus in Aquarius can deliver information and say, well, this is what's going on. This is what people are talking about. This is what we've been discussing. So he gets a little bit of a catch up from Venus in Aquarius. And then he has his station direct on December 15th. December 15th, Mercury stations direct at 6 degrees of Sagittarius at 3:56 p.m. Eastern Time, and that is a standstill. Just as the stationing retrograde is a standstill, this is where Mercury stops moving, stops running. Sagittarius is the marathon runner. And now there's a sense of moving into stillness to catch his breath, to digest and understand what he's been accumulating and learning, and to sit with it, which can support integrating everything he's experienced. Then Mercury begins to move forward again and is going to interact in a T-square with both Jupiter and Saturn at 13 and 14 degrees, December 26th and December 27th. Now this is important because on December 24th and 25th, we have the second square between Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn and Pisces. We had the first square August 19th and 20th, when both planets were at 17 degrees. Now this is their second square, and they're working something out. They are trying to figure out what must be completed and removed, which is the Saturn and Pisces intention. What wisdom are you taking forward that supports your life in a concrete way? And what is just frivolous information? Where is that Jupiter in Gemini giving you too much that is just spinning out or overwhelming or creating mental fatigue? There is a need here to identify the excess and establish new daily habits that support your energy. That's part of this square between Jupiter and Saturn. And then you have joyful, funny Mercury and Sagittarius now direct entering that conversation. Again, Mercury shows up to make this T-square again with Jupiter and Saturn on December 26th and 27th, where there could be new understandings, new opinions, more wisdom, perhaps even deeper insight into previous experiences, or at least an emerging curiosity to learn more or know more. Now, this also could be a Mercury that returns to the table with a stronger opinion, with more ability to assert oneself and demonstrate what one has learned. Overall, though, this T-square is still uncomfortable. It isn't about resolution or even perhaps listening. There's still an energy here that feels unstable and off. It can be triggering and contentious. Then Mercury continues forward, makes the next trine to Chiron. Chiron is now direct at 19 degrees of Aries. So both are direct. That means a solution lands, a choice works. This could feel like you're ready to let something go. You're turning a page. There's just more flow here with this final trine between Mercury and Sagittarius and Chiron in Aries at 19 degrees. Then as we move into January, Mercury clears the retrograde shadow on January 3rd after passing 22 degrees of Sagittarius, but meets up with a square to Neptune in Pisces at 27 degrees. Now, this happens on January 7th, and this is when Mercury is also conjunct the galactic center. Mercury conjunct the galactic center, squaring Neptune, is ultimately an opening into higher knowledge and wisdom that was not previously presented, and you could just feel exhausted. I'm just tired. I'm worn out. I don't want to talk about anything anymore. My brain needs a break. Granted, you could feel that through a lot of this Mercury retrograde season, but as Mercury squares Neptune on January 7th, there could be a sense of what is real? What is truth? Is it all propaganda? Is it all lies? What do I believe? And the answer is to stay open. To stay open what you don't know, and to stay open to the fact that not everything is presenting itself in a realistic form just yet. So we have 2 months of Mercury in Sagittarius, undergoing some deep questioning and review, moving through discomfort, feeling like perhaps I don't understand, I don't know, I'm curious, but maybe I don't want to know. There can be a restlessness and a scattered energy here. Then when Mercury finally enters Capricorn on January 8th, there could be a sense of feeling more clear-headed, more solid, and even the ability to focus is going to strengthen again January 8th when Mercury enters Capricorn. So it's quite a wild ride for this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Certainly trust your energy, know when to take a break, when to turn off all of the media or communications or stimuli. Stepping away from social media might feel really good. Understanding how to support your energy is very important. And to also remember that we are each in charge of our mind and where it goes. And you could realize, wow, I'm wasting a lot of time on things that just don't matter. I'm thinking about things that aren't important. I've overly invested in something and I don't want it to be on my plate anymore. So this is an opportunity to be in charge of what you want to focus on and what appeals to you now. And I also feel like that Mercury in Sagittarius, because it has that insatiable need to understand, and that's an open Mercury in Sag, by the way. Mercury in Sag can be very closed-minded. There can be a lot of righteousness and a lot of dogma, and that is definitely a closed-minded understanding of matters going on or of interests. But the open-minded Mercury and Sag can take you into some cool new places, open you up to things you didn't understand, you didn't know, introduce you to new hobbies, new ways of enjoying your life, and also have a great sense of humor that reminds you, I just want to laugh about this. I want to enjoy this. I want to find the fun. I want to have some good parties. I want to celebrate what is good in my life and good in my world, even if it's only moving through and I know it's going to change again as we move forward. So I hope this gives you some good insight into how to make the most of this particular Mercury retrograde, where we are living in a world of multiples. We are living in a world of many energies overlapping, commingling, disagreeing, separating, and coming together, an endless dance of energies. But I hope this gives you a good heads up on how to approach it and how to make the most of it in your life and in your world. And on that note, if you do want to learn more and you're curious about how to take a new angle on your astrology chart, be sure and check out my program called Your Cosmic Codes, which helps you identify 12 universal spiritual laws in your chart and how the 12 astrology signs have a natural affinity with these 12 universal spiritual laws. Shows you where your energies might be strengthened, as well as how to make stronger connections to certain spiritual laws, how to see your chart through this new lens, to have a new take on it, as well as new ways to be in your manifestation abilities. I loved creating this course for you. It involves real-world examples of the energy. It includes intuitive messages. It helps you understand what to look for in your own life, as well as how to apply the energies so that you can enhance some of these manifestations for yourself. So again, it's called Your Cosmic Codes. I'll put the link below the podcast here if you want to check it out, but it might be really eye-opening as well as validating about some things you've been through in your life. And of course, that's my intention, is to bring you into more of your power, your sense of self, and what you are here to experience in this lifetime. So as always, thank you for joining me. You can find more of my current offerings over at mollymccord.online. And I look forward to connecting with you again every Monday and Wednesday with this podcast. Wishing you a beautiful journey through this Mercury retrograde season, and I'll see you back here soon.